Hi, and welcome to session 4 in our Human Resources Management Training Program. First, I've got to thank you all for tearing yourselves away from your Melbourne Cup functions, which I know all of you have done. And your reward for tuning in today is that you get a nice, easy, short session. So previously in sessions, we've talked about areas like awards and agreements, the induction process, employment status, and the entitlements that come with that. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a tangent away from the specific employment law section that I deal with and talk about some of the other agencies that deal with employment law matters. We often find that one of the chief frustrations with our clients, whether it be business owners, employees, or even just members of the public in general, is that they often don't know which area to contact, and they feel that they get passed around from department to department and no one actually cares. So I thought it might be useful to define the different roles of a few different agencies that deal with employment-related matters so that you know who to talk to if you have any questions. So today's session is who you're going to call. First up, we're going to look at tax. I always panic a little bit when I get questions on tax in seminars, just because I really don't deal with it at all. That is dealt with by the Australian Taxation Office. Now, there's two different hotlines that they have. There's the business tax queries for all business-related taxes, and that's 1372.26. And then there's the personal tax line, which is 1328.26, which deals with, obviously, personal tax matters. They have a website, which is ato.gov.au, which is a very, very good website. It's got a lot of publications, a lot of information on it. So I do recommend that you check that out at some stage if you've got any queries of a tax-related nature. Next, we're going to look at superannuation. Now, superannuation, again, is an employment-related area, but it's not one that we directly deal with because it doesn't come from the legislation that we deal with. So that's dealt with by the Super Guarantee Hotline. Now, they are an arm of the Taxation Office, and their number is 131020. So they advise on and enforce the superannuation requirements. So any questions that you've got about superannuation, they should be able to answer that. And also, if as an employee you find that you've been underpaid your superannuation, or you want to investigate the status of your super, you can give them a call and they can investigate that for you. With all these numbers, if you do wish to get a hold of them, you can give Wageline a call, or you can give you can contact Rosalind at the Department of Lands and Regional Development. She has my contact details, and I can get a sheet that has all these different contact details on there for you. Next, we're going to look at WorkCover. So WorkCover deals with workers' compensation insurance. Workers' compensation insurance is obviously insurance that you have to take out on all your employees to make sure that if they are injured in the workplace, they can get their medical bills paid and they can get paid time off if it turns out to be a lengthy injury that causes them to miss a lot of work. So their number is 1300 794 744. So as I say, they deal with workers' compensation insurance. They can provide information on all the areas of payment while workers' compensation, so whether that deals with the amount that someone's paid, the method of payment, whether they accrue leave on that time. Also, they provide conciliation services to resolve any disputes about workers' compensation that arise in the workplace. I'll just pause briefly now to mention that if you do have any questions, our number here is 1-800-678-20. So if you wish to clarify anything that I'm talking about, as I say, because these are areas that I don't deal with on a day-to-day basis, I might not be able to go into too much depth, but if you do have any queries, then please do feel free to call in and ask. Next, we're going to look at WorkSafe. So WorkSafe administers the Occupational Safety and Health Act. So they deal with workplace safety. So they deal with a few different areas. They can provide advice to employers and employees about their requirements when it comes to workplace safety. They can provide information on their website. They've got a lot of very good publications on their website, a lot of information there. They can provide training, and also they can do workplace assessments to make sure that everything is meeting the requirements of the legislation. The other area that they deal with is licensing for higher risk work. So if an employee is, say, doing scaffolding or driving a forklift or anything like that, they provide the licenses and the assessment process. All right, next is consumer protection. Now, consumer protection deal with an entire raft of different issues, and some of them are employment-related and some of them aren't. They're the place that you go to as a consumer if you felt that, say, you had been bullied into a sale, or that you felt that that a business had misrepresented the products or the services that they provided. But as an employer, it's also important to be aware that they do information regarding the regulation of associations, charities, and incorporated entities. And also, they provide licensing for various industries. So they regulate things like the real estate industry or the motor vehicle maintenance industry. They relegate the licensing for that. Their number is 1300-304054. They also deal with things like ScamNet. They do Fuel Watch, so they monitor the price of fuel. They have a Twitter feed, which they deal with a lot of information on there. So they have a lot of information on their website, and I would recommend that you do check that out. All right, now I've had a few queries from CRCs about apprentices and trainees. Now we do deal with that at the Department of Commerce to a certain amount. We deal with their minimum rates of pay and their employee entitlements, but there are other areas that it's important to be aware of that are registered by the Apprentice Centre, which is an arm of the Department of Training and Workforce Development. So their number is 131954. So they can give you all the information that you need on starting an apprenticeship or a traineeship, and that's both from the point of view of an employer and also the point of view of an apprentice or a trainee. They also provide information on any financial incentives or support that's available to employers who engage apprentices or trainees. And also they are the mediation service if there are issues with trainees or apprentices. So areas such as disputes within the workplace about the level of training or the work that's being provided. And also they're the people to contact if you wish to suspend, transfer or cancel an apprenticeship or a traineeship. That wouldn't be something that we deal with at my department. All right, moving swiftly along. The next area I'm going to talk about is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So they deal with anti-discrimination legislation. This is the place that an employee would go to if they felt that they had been disadvantaged because of their race, their religion, their gender preference, their family responsibilities. Any areas like that come under the Employment Opportunity legislation. So that's dealt with by the Equal Opportunity Commission of Western Australia. Their number is 1-800-198-149. They, as I say, deal with anti-discrimination legislation. So they would take complaints and inquiries from employees who felt that they were being discriminated against. And they also offer training to workplaces. So often you can get workplace diversity training and things like that from the Equal Opportunity Commission. All right, now we're going to go back to employment law specifically. Now I'm going to just talk a little bit about the two different areas that you might want to talk to when it comes to employment law and when you would talk to them and the different areas that they would deal with. Firstly, I'm going to talk about Fair Work Australia and the Fair Work Ombudsman. Now, they are the federal equivalent of our department. So they deal with the same sort of information that we deal with, and they do the same kind of services. They just do it for businesses in the federal system of employment law. So their number is 131394. That will get you through to the Fair Work info line. Now, there's a bit of confusion, I feel, about what the difference between Fair Work Australia and the Fair Work Ombudsman actually is. Essentially, the Fair Work Australia, or FWA, they deal with dispute resolution. So they would be the tribunal that hear employment law cases. So if there was a serious dispute in the workplace or an unfair dismissal claim, they would hear that. They would listen to that, and then they would make a decision like any court would. Whereas the Ombudsman, or FWO, they investigate breaches of the Fair Work Act. So that would be to do with more monetary breaches. If someone feels they're not getting paid correctly, or they're not getting the right kind of overtime, the right kind of breaks, or any kind of breach of a modern federal award, it would be the Fair Work Ombudsman that would deal with that, and it would be those guys that you would call for any information. Just to stop briefly again, if you've got any questions about any of these agencies, or if any of the previous sessions that I've done have raised any questions for you that you wish to go through, please do feel free to ring. And finally, I'm going to talk a bit more about WageLine. Now, I've talked about them a lot. I feel like a bit of a broken record. Why someone would make a record about a state government call centre, I'm not exactly sure, and it's probably not that surprising that someone broke it. But regardless, WageLine is the call centre for our department, for our division, sorry, and they deal with all state employment law matters. So as I was saying before about Fair Work Australia, basically all the same areas are dealt with at a state level by WageLine. So they can give advice about minimum entitlements, about unfair dismissal, about break times, and they're also I always feel that if they're not the last people you talk to, they're the second last, because all the agencies that I talked about, they're very well versed in what they do, and if they find that they're not the best people to help you, they can always refer you to the right agency. So that's basically it for today. As I say, very brief session, just briefly going over all the different agencies. If you wish to contact me to get either a copy of those slides so that you've got all those numbers in one place, please feel free to do so. So we'll leave that for a few minutes, and if anyone's got any questions, please do call in. All right, guys, well, thank you for tuning in. That does it for us today. Please do join us on November 20 when we will be dealing with leave entitlements and employer and employee obligations. So just to quickly summarise what we talked about today, we went through some of the different areas that you might want to contact other than WageLine when you're dealing with employment law matters. Areas like tax, work safety, workers' compensation insurance, superannuation, apprentices and trainees, and consumer protection. So please, if you do have any queries in the interim between now and the next session, please feel free to call WageLine to get any information that you're after. Thanks for tuning in, guys.